All right, in this recording I just want to go over a couple of quick things that I frequently do to modify images, both for web programming, for web data management, for web development, for programming logic, for mobile development. I do a lot of image editing, but pretty basic image editing. I don't get real complex. The program I use is paint.net. I did a search for paint.net download and got a bunch of stuff here. The place to get it from is probably getpaint.net. So this first link that I have here, but www.getpaint.net, here's another link for the same place. If you click on that, it'll take you to this site. What's annoying about this site, and this is the download page, if you didn't get here directly, you can click on the download page. But what's annoying about this site is it has a lot of these big distractors. This is download. It looks like everything's good, but if you scroll a little bit further, it's actually allowing you to download the PDF creator. So be careful you don't use that. Scroll a little bit further, and this is where you download paint.net, and you can use either this one or the mirror host. It really doesn't matter too much. So I'm going to click on this one, and then you have another distractor. This one for PDF Creator. Again, when I did this the first time, it was a distractor for 7-zip or something like that. So there's all these distractors that look like it's the right thing, but it's not. These are really advertisements if you look close. This is the link that you need to download, and then it allows you to download the zip file. So once you download it and install it, then when you launch it, it'll look like this. Paint.net has all these other windows around here. I do use the history. This allows you to move back and forth and undo all the stuff that you've done, so that's kind of convenient. I don't do layers, so you can close any of these that you don't use. I use the colors every so often, and I use the tools, so I'm going to leave those open. Let me just get that one out of the way, not that it's hurting anything. One of the first things we need to learn how to do is get images in here. The two ways I do it most of the time, I have some images over on the other screen that you can't see here. So I'm going to bring one of those in. The easiest way to bring it in is to simply drag the image into your paint drawing, and it'll ask you, do you want to add it or add it as a layer? I'm just going to open it, so it opens it as a new window. Paint.net keeps all the images back here, so if you have 3 or 4 of them open, you can switch back and forth between them. I'm using a penguin theme here for no particular reason, but that's one way to bring images in. I'm going to close that one. Notice there's a little X up here so I can close him. All right. Another way to bring images in is to actually have them on the clipboard. So I'm going to take a quick visit to the web and find some image. Of course, there's a convenient one here on my home page, so I'll steal this. I'll copy the image to the clipboard. When you do that, if you try to paste it and there's already a new document open here, if this is already here and you try to paste, it'll ask you all kinds of goofy questions. What I normally want to do is paste it as a new image, and if you go to Edit, Paste, there it is. It's Alt-Control-V, which is fairly handy on your keyboard. So my picture is still on the clipboard. I can do an Alt-Control-V, and it'll bring me in as a new image. And notice up here there's 2 images now, that new one that I don't really need, and my picture, which I don't really need either, so we'll get rid of that. In this case, because I pasted it, I didn't save it. It'll remind you to save it. Okay, let's bring that Darth Vader. Actually, I'm going to bring in a different one to start with. I'm going to follow my notes here. Let's bring Darth Vader in again. Here he comes. Okay. This image, you can see, is a PNG, and remember from most of my other classes, I've talked about what PNG images are versus JPEG images versus GIF images. A PNG image is very high quality. It does it's very high compression, so it shrinks images down size-wise on disk, but it can be transparent. A JPEG image cannot. JPEG image is high quality, high compression, but no transparency. So a PNG image is pretty common. So this guy's pretty good. There's really no problem with this. These gray boxes, the checkerboard you see in the background, designate that that's transparent. That's how paint.net shows transparency. So this image is pretty good, but if I'm going to put him on my website or in my programming logic page, he's kind of big. So one of the first things I want to do with this image is resize him. The way I resize images is I go to Image, Resize. There's other things you can do here. I'm not going to cover everything you can do with paint.net, just the stuff I most often do. So I'm going to resize him. I have a couple of options. I can resize by percentage, so I can say make him half as big as he used to be. Click on OK, and now that's the size that he appears. There is zooming here. I can zoom in on him, zoom back out again. If you want to adjust the zoom level, I normally like to look at it at 100%, and that's what he's going to look like on my programming logic site. Again, here's the history. Anytime I want to, I can undo. I can use Control-Z as well. After a while, you're going to have quite a list of steps here. You can actually go back to one of those steps and say, take me all the way back to here. Generally, I just undo, undo, undo. So here I undo. That puts them back again. I'm still zoomed at 100%. Another thing I can do for resize is say I want them a particular pixel size, height, and width. And maybe for my web size or my website, I'm comfortable with 100 pixels for the width. Notice that the height automatically adjusts so that he doesn't get distorted, doesn't get into silly putty mode. If you do want to completely distort him and make this a little skinnier penguin Darth Vader guy, then you could turn this off and adjust him even more. But I don't normally do that. Print size is in inches. If you're printing something that's beyond our scope here. This is mostly for what I'm talking about here. It's mostly for getting him on websites. So I want him 100 by 100, so I'm going to click on OK, and he'll shrink down. Now that's the size that I like. Once I like it, then all I have to do is save it. If I do a save, it will replace the original. Of course, you can do a save as and call this penguin small or SM penguin. Usually I do penguin. I can't even type today. Penguin underscore SM. Okay. And while we're here, if we wanted to, we could change the image type, but this is already the most common or the most recent common image type. Before, most images on the web were JPEG types. That image of me was a JPEG. Today, most new images that are going up on the web are PNG files. So if you're creating a new file, my advice would be to use the PNG type. We're going to see that in the next step here. So I'm good. Can save it. I'm not going to bother here. And then he's good. I'm going to close this. Going to ask me, do you want to save one more time? I'm going to say no. Okay, the next thing we might want to do is change the image type. So I'm going to bring in another cartoon, another penguin. Now this one is a JPEG file. You can see that up here. And notice this is not transparent back here. Okay. It looks like it's transparent. It's white, but it's not transparent. It's white. If you put this on a website or a VB form window that has a background color or that has a background image, this white will obscure your background color, background image. So I might want to make him transparent. Here's the way I do transparency in paint.net. Paint.net has a magic wand. It works really quite well. You click on it, and it will select parts of your picture for you. So if I click on this, and it has a tolerance, okay? This tolerance, and I don't, maybe the next image will let me do that a little bit. The tolerance is 50%. That means any color that was within 50% of this white will also be selected. So tip here, I first click, and sure enough, it selects the right piece. And then if I click over here, it selects that piece. The key to this is if you control click, you can add to your selection. Now as I'm looking at this, it looks a little fuzzy around the edges, so maybe my tolerance is too high. So I'm just going to press escape because I haven't done anything. I just selected stuff. And I'm going to bring my tolerance all the way down to 0. Sometimes that's extreme, and I'll get shades of white here, and I don't get them all. So you can adjust that. I'm just dragging to get the tolerance that I want, maybe 10%, 8%, there. Click. Oh, that's even worse. See the little fuzzies around the edges, so it was better before. So I'm going to undo that, and let's go up to about here. Try it again. That's not bad. He's still kind of fuzzy. This often happens when you're trying to make backgrounds of images transparent. It just makes fuzzy around the edges. Not much you can do about that, except start modifying it on a pixel by pixel basis. So now I have the area selected I want to remove. To remove those, I just press the delete key. Select the window so we're in the right place. Press the delete key, and notice it takes all that stuff out. And now that it's gone, it doesn't look too bad, and I would suppose it depends on where I put this penguin. If I put him on a background texture, he'll probably look okay. If I put him on a solid background, he may still be a little fuzzy around the edges. We can't see them here because the gray and white dots are kind of obscuring them. So he might still be a little fuzzy around the edges, but it's hard to tell. Now, in this case, if I'm going to save him transparent, I cannot save him as a JPEG file because he has to, JPEG images cannot be transparent. I have to save him as either a GIF or as a PNG file. Again, the new technology is PNG, so how do I save them as a PNG file? I just go to File, Save As, and then down here change the type. Notice all the types are here. Remember, the only ones we want to use for the web are PNG, JPEG, and GIF. PNG is probably be your first and best choice. So I'm going to click on that. Where do I want to put him? That's fine. It's kind of a goofy name. I'll just shorten it here and just do Penguin, and that should work because I don't have one of those already. Press Tab. It's going to be a PNG file. It'll automatically put the extension on. So if you need to change an image type, it's very simple. You suck them into your drawing program and then do a Save As a different type. This one will also be transparent at the same time. I could have shrunk him down. This usually comes up to give you some options. I just stick with the default and everything works out pretty good. If I plug him into a web page and he's a little too fuzzy, then maybe I go find a different penguin. Or I can zoom in on him. And you can see around the edges here, as I zoom in, you can see kind of ragged edges, but there's not too much I can do about that anymore because of the pixel size. It's very little I can adjust here, but you can try it. Okay. Sometimes the transparency obscures what you're seeing. I mean, right here it looks a little fuzzy. If the transparency obscures it, what I do is use the fill can and some color that's not used anywhere, like a lime green. Okay. I use the fill can and I spill. Notice here's the lime green. If you use the left button, you can spill paint into here, into here, into here. And now that I look at him, he's really not that bad. Not terribly fuzzy. And I'm zoomed in on him, so if I go back to 100% zoom, he'll hardly be fuzzy at all. He looks pretty darn good. Right. But if you need to, you can zoom in and then on a pixel by pixel basis, use the paintbrush normally, or the eraser to remove stuff, or the paintbrush to change colors. Normally I will use the eraser to pull out pixels that I don't want. It'll make them transparent. If you need the green to see the color better, then you probably want to get rid of it when you're done. That's easy. Once again, use the magic wand, click, delete, click, delete. You can do it over and over, or you can control click and do them all at once. And again, save him. I haven't made any changes, but it's probably going to ask me to save him when I'm done. So, saved him as a PNG. I'll just hit save again just so it doesn't yell at me, and close it. And we've got a couple more things that I want to talk about. We've resized images. We've made them transparent. We've changed the image type. One more. Here's one I found on the web. He's kind of cool looking, kind of goofy looking, but there's all this other stuff that came with him, and he's a GIF file. Now, one warning, remember GIF files can be animated. They are the only ones that can be animated. Modifying the animation, you need a special program. The last one I saw that had that in there was the Paint Shop Pro Animation Studio. I don't know if there's any free ones out there. I don't normally mess with animated GIFs. I either like them on the web or I don't. If I don't use them. But remember, animated GIFs are multiple images. So if you wanted to make an animated GIF transparent, for instance, you would have to go into every one of the little snapshots in that movie and make it transparent. And for me, that's rarely useful. All right, another thing you'll often want to do is select a part of the image and crop it out. Right, so to select a part, you've got two tools. You can use the rectangle here, or there's also an ellipse or circular type selection. I'll do this first and then stop it. That one, you put it in one corner and drag a circle. I know I didn't get exactly what I wanted. If I want to adjust this, then I use, I believe it's the white one. This allows you to actually move the pixel. So if I use this one, I can drag this. This becomes transparent, and his head's now sitting over here. I can undo that. I don't do that very often. This is more often what I'm going to do, and that is to adjust the selection. Okay? So now I can move my circle a little bit, make it a little bigger, adjust it some more, till the circle is exactly the size that I want. If I want to move this circle, I can touch in the middle of it and move it and highlight a different part. So instead of moving the pixels, this moves the highlight. That's very convenient. Normally I don't use circles, but I could. Okay. I normally use rectangles. The rectangle works exactly the same way. You draw a box, then you use the white little modify here to change your selection size, to select exactly what you want, and to move the selection to get exactly what you want surrounded. So I normally use a rectangle, but in this case it's going to work out pretty well. I'm going to now crop. The way to crop is simply, I believe it's under Edit Crop. I don't normally use the toolbar. I'll show you the shortcut key in a second. Let's try Image. There it is, Crop to Selection, Control-Shift-X. I know that command. I do this a lot. So normally I'm just down here doing Control-Shift-X, and now my image has been modified. Notice I've got a circular image still with this kind of a computer background on it, and I have transparent stuff. Now I'm going to try, I don't know how well I'm going to do, I'm going to try to make the rest of this transparent, so all I have is this penguin head. And this was once again where the magic wand and its tolerance are going to come in, because I have multiple shades of gray here. If I just do one click, that's pretty close already, okay? But not quite, so I'm going to undo that. Escape would do it. I'm going to bring the tolerance up a little bit more so it grabs a little more of this darker stuff. And there, it did a nice job. Notice because this is all through, it picked everything in between here. I can delete it, and now I've got kind of a circular shaped here with just the head. If I now wanted to, I can also use these selection tools to delete stuff. So I might use my rectangular tool, and let's say I don't want so much shoulder stuff here. I can delete that, and then I can draw a box around this and delete it. And now it's getting kind of tight, so I'm going to zoom in and delete. I do rectangles just because I can get a lot of stuff. You can do this pixel by pixel. Okay. And now I've got maybe a little too much space around the outside, so I'm still going to use the rectangle, but this time to surround the head and get just as much space as I need. Looks good up there. Remember, if I need to adjust it, I can click the white arrow and move the edges until it's just right, and then Control-Shift-X to crop, and I get just that head. And this is all transparent, so if you stick this into Microsoft Word, the text will wrap through here. If you're in a web page, you don't have much power, but you can put text on top of this and so on. And this is not his actual size. Remember, it's always good to take a look at him actual size. For my web page, that's about the size I'm looking for. In most of my classes, I recommend that you use a drawing program like this to resize your images to make them the size you want. You don't want this big, huge monster penguin what you had before, and then simply crop him in Microsoft Word. Your Word document will be way too large. If you bring the whole thing into your web page, it'll be way too large. Same thing in Android. Resize these things ahead of time so that they're the right size, at least a lot closer, so that your program doesn't have to resize it. All right, we selected stuff, we've resized, we've cropped, we've made things transparent. The one last thing I want to show you how to do is how to create text that is an image. In most programs, Android mobile programming excluded here, there are limited fonts. Right? If you go to the web and you use a fancy font on your computer, it's not very likely that the person on the other end who's looking at your web page has that same font installed. But there is a way that you can create a title using text in a fancy font and then make that a picture so that it works on every web page. Same thing happens in Visual Studio. If you put a fancy font on a title and then transfer that title or that program to a friend of yours' computer, if they don't have the same font, it may not appear the same way. I'm not going to save this one. I'm going to create a new document. That's what I do with these. And let's see what that size looks like. That's kind of small. If you want to make the canvas bigger, you can do the same thing here. Change the canvas, and I'll make it 300. And it's not maintaining an aspect ratio here, so yeah, the height's good, I just want it a little wider. So there's my size. Most drawing programs have a text tool, and you click where you want the text to appear, and then you change the font. And so let's do something kind of fancy and scroll through here till I find something there. That one's pretty good. Okay. and I want to make it a little bit bigger, so I'm going to go to 18. I don't really want this funky green color, so I think I'm going to go to black. And now I can type my name, and it comes up kind of cool looking. And that's 100%. Now maybe I'll back up here and make it size 36, because I think I actually want it a little bit bigger. Got a couple of choices here. You could make a font bigger as you're typing it, which is probably the best idea, or you can just resize the image. If you're making it bigger, most of the time your image is going to distort, it's going to pixelate. So you're better off, in this case, I'm better off doing this. Right, now I don't need this white space down here, and I probably want most of this stuff to be transparent. So I'm going to zoom in so I can see a little bit better. Notice how it pixelates. Right? That's okay because I'm just working on it. Normally at 100% it looks fine. I'm going to draw a box around what I really want, which is just my name. And this, by the way, is how I make my signature for Microsoft Outlook. If you get email from me, my signature is handwritten. I've actually written it on a piece of paper, then scanned it, sucked it into a drawing program, modified it, put a shadow behind it, etc. Control-Shift-X to crop. Now I have just this. I can use my magic wand to select the background. I got most of it. Hopefully, I'm going to set the tolerance level here in Escape. Set the tolerance level to 0. I just want to remove the white. Delete. Click inside the O, delete. Click inside the E, delete. Bottom of the A, delete. And now I can save this as text. It looks like text, but it's actually going to be saved as an image. And once again, going to do a save. Paint, by default, normally wants to store in its own format, this PDN format. That's not going to do you any good. That's only for Paint. Right? If you're creating images with lots of layers and you want to be able to take those layers back apart again, then you have to use this Paint document type so that you can take the images apart. We're not doing that. I'm going to use PNG, but be careful because by default, Paint tends to want to save in the Paint format. Untitled, no good. Let's just call this my name and then save it, and this will be saved as text. And you can then plug it into any of your web pages, VB programs. The background will show through your text, your document, but your text will stay. And even though that's a fancy font that other computers may not have, you'll still be able to have a consistent appearance for your web pages, your programming files, etc. All right, those are the things that I normally do with Paint. Very minimal. Usually it's resizing, cropping, and making the background color. You can experiment and you can start practicing. There are picture effects here. I'm not going to bother saving it. There are pictures effect here. I can blur things and add a motion blur to it. And it'll notice what it's doing in the background there. It's blurring it. Right? And I can make it a little fuzzier if I want to. Again, it's not at 100%. There's all kinds of cool things in this drawing program, and all the other programs out there, I'm trying to remember the name, Photoshop, etc. They all have a lot of these same capabilities, and you get to experiment with them. But I wanted to show you the basics that we need to make images look halfway decent in our program. So that's the basics. The rest, you're kind of on your own. Enjoy.